selling and who've developed a set of characteristics in persistence and braving the weather and being out there day after day and essentially doing something in the open. So he said, why don't I use these people as a marketing channel? That rather than begging, that they will go out and become distributors of products that they will sell. And by the way, to some extent, the people who sell balloons, the people who sell planes, or the New Year celebration gifts, etc. They're doing a little bit of that, but no company had ever thought of using these as a sales channel. Partly because I would imagine companies don't want to be branded as being, companies that would use that particular kind of channel. But nonetheless, he found creative solutions, and essentially he is training a lot of the beggars in Dhaka to be a sales channel for a lot of useful things that they can sell. And essentially the proposition that he has is that I will give you 1,000 taka to buy a few items and sell them on the streets, and then if you come back, and he treats it as a loan, he says if you come back and if you've made some money out of it, I'll give you a bigger loan so that you can sell more products. And that is then, and some people don't come back, they just take away the 1,000. That's fine too. But essentially he was thinking like an entrepreneur. Now, thinking like an entrepreneur is extremely important. What else is important in terms of entrepreneurship? If you think of the other people that you mentioned, Narendra Modi, what else is required? What makes him an entrepreneur? Anybody? Speech that you have to be able to persuade? Yes? Dedication and persistence towards the work. What else? The one who can identify the inefficiencies in the market. Yes? Leadership qualities. What else? Yes? Someone who can turn a problem into an opportunity. All of these. So let me share with you a couple of stories. Some years ago, there was a 16-year-old in the United States, and you'll understand in a minute why I'm telling you an American story. I'll tell you an Indian story later as well. A 16-year-old took up a summer job. Now, this is one thing I love about the United States, is that it's perfectly acceptable, in fact encouraged, for children to take up a job after school, during the summer, because they say it builds the work ethic, and I'm a big believer in that. So this individual at the age of 16 got a job in a newspaper selling newspaper subscriptions. Now when he came back after his summer break to 11th grade or whatever it was, his teacher asked him as a class exercise to fill out an income tax form. Some of you may have tried it yourself. It's not that complicated. If you have some income, you may want to try and fill out your income tax form. So he did that, and his teacher gave him a failing grade, saying that this is obviously wrong because he filled out an income there from selling newspaper subscriptions over a 2-month period, which was bigger than her entire annual income as a teacher. So she said, this is obviously wrong. You get an F for lying. It turns out that not only was that the truth, he had actually made enough money to buy a BMW. So as you know, in the United States, a 16-year-old can get a driving license. So he got his first car and he bought it with his own money, 2 months of work in the summer, and he bought a BMW. And he had a special insight. Again, he saw what everybody else saw and he observed what nobody else observed. So he came up with a formula which now has become standard in the industry for selling newspaper subscriptions. Do you know what that formula was? What was his key observation that made him an entrepreneur? Anybody? How would you sell? If you were to ask Suppose I were to make you a commission agent and say, yeah, for the 2 summer months you're going to sell subscriptions for Gujarat Samachar or Sandesh or for Times of India or for that matter Mint. How would you make a lot of money selling newspaper subscriptions? Anybody? So he asked himself the following question: who is likely to buy a newspaper subscription? Let me reframe the question. Can you come up with some thoughts on who is likely to buy a newspaper subscription? Where will you find people who will buy newspaper subscriptions? It's another pointed question. Yes? Corporate offices? They would already be subscribing to newspapers. Why would they buy from you? Those who travel in the train? So that then is not a subscription, yaar. वो तो एक copy होगी ना? Yes. Old age homes. Now, why are they more likely to buy newspapers? But would they not be already buying? If they need newspapers, they can surely get a subscription. Why would they wait for you to call on them? Think about it. So anyway, to cut a long story short, his key insight was that people who need newspaper subscriptions, so this was the key observation, are people who change homes. Right? So for example, when we moved from the IIM campus to the AU campus, our newspaper wala, obviously वो जो कहावत है ना, मुल्ला की दौड़ मस्जिद तक, वो मस्जिद फर्क थी, हमारी मस्जिद फर्क है. So we had a new newspaper person. So there was a new newspaper person. So in the US, he figured out that people who buy newspaper subscriptions are people who've changed homes. So he went so the first thing that he did is that he went and found out from the city hall, these are public records, who are the people who had just bought a home. And he just targeted them, and that was the secret of his success. And that person, it may not surprise you to know, that was his first venture. His second venture is now world famous. In fact, many of you in this room probably have his products. His name is Michael Dell. So this is a story that is not very well known about Michael Dell, but it gives you a sense of what made him an entrepreneur. Now, what was his second observation that led to the growth of Dell Computers? Does anybody know? What was the key insight, the key observation, the key thing that everybody saw but nobody else observed? Yes. So say a bit more. What do you mean by customization? That's right. So essentially, a PC is something which has many, many options. And the standard options that were available in the marketplace, today of course it's very different. But the options that were available in the marketplace at that time were limited. And this was a pain that he observed. He was a student. He was, I think, at that point 19 years old, and he was living in the dorms of University of Texas at Austin. So he was living in the dorms there, and he observed that there was this need that people had to customize computers. So he started customizing computers mostly from his fellow students, mostly for his fellow students, and he started selling them. And it was a big business. And then he said, maybe I can do this for the community. So he started selling it in Austin, Texas. And then one thing led to another, and of course now they have a huge operation headquartered in Austin, Texas. So it gives you a sense that entrepreneurship is something that you should be thinking about early on. The earlier you think about entrepreneurship, the better it will be for you. And it's not important what it is that you try and attempt to sell. The fact that you try and venture out is going to be extremely important. So think about what it is that you want to basically offer to the world. So let me share an observation about where you think that idea for an entrepreneurial venture will come. Now, what was the case with Michael Dell? In Michael Dell's case, it just so happened that he took an internship with a newspaper, and essentially he just applied his entrepreneurial skills to that situation. And that is pretty much the template for most entrepreneurs. That is, they see the environment around them, they solve a problem which somebody around them has, and then they find a solution. So this is where I tell you a second story, and this is an Indian story. So I go around the world and do programs on entrepreneurship. I do it for executives, I do it for business schools, I do it for a variety of audiences. But one of the most interesting programs that I did was for students at Jodhpur University, because my thought was, can I take the same course that I teach at IIM Ahmedabad, which is very popular, heavily oversubscribed, that kind of stuff. Can I take it to the average student in India? So I went to Jodhpur University and I assembled a group of 300 students from Jodhpur University, and I essentially taught them a version of the same course. And so it occurred to me, let me invite an entrepreneur, a Jodhpur University boy who made it good in the world. So one such person that I had sort of heard about was Sandeep Kochar. So I found out about him, and it turned out that he was in China. His home now is in China. He divides his time between Beijing and Moscow. But I called him up, and he agreed to talk to my students in Jodhpur via Skype. And he told a fascinating tale. And the reason for telling that tale also was that his first venture, he's a global entrepreneur, but his first standalone branded venture was actually out of Jodhpur. And his story is very interesting. A Jodhpur University boy with degree in economics. Many of you here can relate to that. And his first job was assisting his grandfather in his photography shop. His grandfather, his father's father, used to run a photography shop and a photography supply store in Lucknow, where his parents had sort of come from. So he tried working with him for a year, didn't like it, and then decided to become a salesman for a paint company. After that, it led to a job in selling chemicals. After selling chemicals, he got into selling chemicals used in the perfume industry. Then he decided that this is not so hard, maybe I can help create parts of a supply chain for companies. He got into that. And one thing led to another, and today he is one of the biggest suppliers of raw materials used by perfume companies worldwide. So he's in a classic B2B business, and then he said, well, why can't I go one step further? Why can't I actually do a B2C business? And that is where he came upon an idea which I think all of you in this room, all of you young people in this room will sort of appreciate. He said, we all want to smell good, especially in front of the opposite sex. Whenever they come together, we especially want to smell good. But the smells that we like are too expensive, right? These are the branded European smells, if you will, or sometimes North American smells, right? The Yves Saint Laurents, the Chanels, the Polos of the world. So he said, look, this is not rocket science. I know what every ingredient that goes into every perfume is. Why can't I create the equivalent of every single major perfume that is sold in the world? And I will sell it for 1/20th the cost. So he has created a company called Perfume Station, and he's now franchising it, where essentially he has created versions of 200 of the top perfumes. And when I went into the store, his brother, who sort of manages that operation out of Jodhpur, he explained to me something that I had never known about perfumes, that perfumes have a language, that the color of the container tells you what kind of smell it is. If it's dark, it has a metallic smell. If it is light and colorful, it is a citrus smell. If it is different colors and different things, there are reasons why they do it. And so he explained to me the whole palette. And essentially they have knockoff versions of the top 200 perfumes. So if you go in there to perfume station, you can say, यार मुझे तो एक ऐसा scent चाहिए जो 3 घंटे चलेगा. It should be light, it should be citrus, it should not be overpowering. Well, here is one for you. Or I'm going to party, late into the night. I need something that will be heavy and it will last me for 24 hours. Well, there's a different perfume for you. And so on and so forth. And now it is a business. So essentially, if you think about it, entrepreneurship is really about, first of all, seeing what everybody has seen and observing what nobody else has observed. That is, there is this market. There's this market for perfumes. People want good perfumes. People want high quality ingredients. But they're not able to pay for the European quality. And so why not create an Indian quality? So this is something which is a surefire formula for success. That is developing, so to speak, your perspective, your nazar, if you will. So let me close by quoting Rahi Masoom Raza. He had a very interesting set of lines which characterize the entrepreneur. In fact, an entrepreneur in any domain. Because at the end of the day, once you've observed what nobody else has observed, there's a process that you can follow. And I won't have time to talk about the process. We talk about this journey in some detail in my entrepreneurship course that I teach. But I will leave you with a punchline. And I'll tell you that in a minute. But at the end of the day, you have to just jump in. And you have to jump in with the knowledge that your first venture will not be your last. Just as Michael Dell's first summer job was not his last entrepreneurial venture. It's a little bit like making a paratha. How many of you know how to make a paratha? By the way, I know one. I know how to do it. It's one of the gifts that I got from the US. You have to learn to be self-sufficient. Paratha banana sikha. So one of the things that I learned is that your first paratha is almost never perfect. तवा गरम नहीं होता पूरा, रोटी पूरी बेली नहीं ठीक से, आटा पूरा ठीक से गूंदा नहीं, वापस गूंदना पड़ेगा, थोड़ा सा पानी और डालना है. But the second paratha will be much better. And the third one will be perfect. This is something that our mothers have known, right? Which is why the first paratha is, or the roti is given to the cow or the dog or whatever. But that same metaphor applies to entrepreneurship. Don't treat your first venture as if it will be your last. Jump in, taste the pleasures of swimming. Taste also the terrifying nature of the first plunge that you have into the pool. All those who have learned to swim, if you have not learned to swim at an early age where you don't have a memory, if you learn to swim as adults, you will remember the moment when you first plunged into the pool. It may have been a terrifying moment. But that terror lasts only for a few minutes or a few seconds. And it's no different from plunging into an entrepreneurial venture. At some point, you have to say, I'm going to plunge in and I'm going to try out something, and I'm going to make sure that I bound my losses, and then I jump in with both feet. And so this is where Rahi Masoom Raza had a beautiful set of lines. He said, लगाई जिन्होंने एड़ वो पहुंच गए उस पार, लगाई जिन्होंने एड़ वो पहुंच गए उस पार, जो हिचकिचाए वो बस देखते ही रह गए. Thank you very much indeed.
Please invite Mr. Punit Lalbhai for the inaugural address.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's always a great pleasure to be with people amongst whom I was one of you not very long ago, so it brings back extremely fond memories of a very, very nice period in my life. And it always, imbues me with energy to interact with people like you. And one of the things that Shailendra Bhai told me as soon as we walked into the room, that there's a great energy in this body of students sitting before us, and that's excellent, given this subject, because energy is the life of entrepreneurship. So I hope that we can have a nice interactive session. Shailendra Bhai is a hard act to follow, so I will do my best to sort of give you my story, and hope you can glean some interesting things from it. I have not been long, part of this, so I'm not an expert on entrepreneurship. I worked for Arvind for about 7 years. But through God's grace, what I do have had, almost a ringside seat to see entrepreneurship unfold, before my eyes, so to speak, from a very young age, because, my family has been deeply involved in many entrepreneurial ventures.